Hello and welcome to the screencast. This is the second in the remote learning series of the screencast, so this one's gonna be a little rough. This particular presentation is for a course that I am teaching on Harry Potter. So some of the information is going to be specific to that course, but after this first minute or two of intro stuff, it's general use for dealing with a PowerPoint template. So if you're not interested in that, just scrub right on past until you see a PowerPoint slide open up and then start playing again. I'm recording at home. My dog is here, my cat is here. She's all excited because I'm talking to the computer machine, and that's fun, or at least the potential for fun. So you might hear her rummaging around in the background while she chews her bone or goes in and out of her crate. Right now, we are in Blackboard, the course management system that we use at Olivet College, at the entry point for my Harry Potter course. What I'm going to do is click through a couple of things to show you where to go to find the stuff that you need. So over here on the left, you see a link for Poster Project. You're going to want to click on that, and then you're going to want to click on Poster Templates. That opens up the area with 4 different templates that I've put up here. This is a poster template that the organic chemistry program at Olivet College uses. This is courtesy of Suzanne Lewis, a professor in that department. This uses similar principles to the one that I'm going to be showing you in more detail, but it uses a slightly different layout to its major design elements. The main principles you have to remember are the way that people read. So they tend to read in the Western tradition in the United States, top to bottom and left to right. So you'll notice that most posters will tend to flow in 3 or 4 columns across the page, and there tends to be a logical progression to them. The poster that my students are using, or that I'm asking them to use, is modeled on the one from organic chemistry, but I've done some revisions to the thing. So here we are. I'm gonna enlarge this so that it fills up my entire screen for the first little bit, and then I'm gonna reduce it down some, mainly so you can see it a little bit better on your monitors. I have a great big monitor, so on a smaller computer screen, some of this stuff might get a little bit hard to see. This is one single slide on a PowerPoint. You can't see the thumbnail bar because it's hidden over here on the side. So I'm going to show you how to make that appear if you want it. Take your cursor, go all the way over, and you see how the arrow turned into a little kind of grabby stick. Click, hold, and drag to the right, and you'll see that the thumbnail is always there. It was just hiding. So basically now I've made it visible. I just don't see why you would need it visible when you're only working on one single slide. So I am going to make that go away again. PowerPoint is a plastic environment. That means that anything that is on this slide right here is absolutely manipulable. I can drag things around, I can get rid of them, I can change them, I can do pretty much whatever I want with the thing. I can even put things on there in layers to create effects with my images. Some of this you kind of have to play around with and experiment a little bit. I'm not going to go into all of those things, but the main takeaway from this point is that you can change a lot of stuff here. And the nice thing is that if you don't like anything, you can always Control-Z back out of it. And then when you do something you do like, you do a save or a save as in order to lock in the new version that you're working on. So for example, if I don't like where I've got this box, I can move it. I can embed it in another box. I can put it over here. I can do an overlapping thing. I can do pretty much whatever I want with it, and I can do that for this one as well. Even this one up here. Oops. I can drag around. You can see how things kind of move around, and this is an example of the layering that I'm talking about, because this box that I just drug down is hiding in effect behind the others. I'm going to Control Z out of all of these changes that I just made. So we get back to where we were in the original thing. Next, this is a poster. It's modeled on research posters that you would find at conferences that academics go to, which means it's big. Normal PowerPoint slides, when you print them out, basically come out as 8.5 by 11. That is not how this thing is scaled. This thing is scaled up very, very large. So I'm going to take you through how to create one of these from scratch in order to show you how to get to the size that I'm talking about, and then I'll show you a couple other things about the scale of this thing that we're dealing with. So if you want to create a brand new poster from scratch without using a template or anything like that, it's actually very easy to do. You get PowerPoint open, you go File, down to New Presentation, and that gets you your PowerPoint. I'm going to expand that out so you can see what's going on. So here I am full screen. This is a PowerPoint title slide, which is not the ideal environment for me to work in. So what I want to do now is I want to go to Layout, click the drop down, click blank. Now it has been reformatted as essentially a blank canvas. I can do whatever I want to on this thing. The problem is that this is still a regular PowerPoint layout, which again would be in print form very small. So I need to go to Design, and then all the way over here on the right, see this icon that says Slide Size. I'm going to click the drop down. I'm going to click Page Setup. This shows that I've got a 13 1/3 by 7 1/2 slide that I'm looking at. What we want to do if you're creating a research poster is scale it up to 48 inches wide by 36 inches high, 4 feet by 3 feet, and then click OK. It's going to ask me if I want to scale content up. I tell it to scale, and you're going to see it do a little jump here. Basically now, although you'll notice the white area, it looks like it has changed shape. That's because it has changed shape. I'm not in a wide screen format anymore. I'm in a literally 4 by 3 format. This is a standard design size for conference research posters. That's how I got to that original size of the template that I'm looking at for most of our examples. So I am going to exit out of this in order to show you some of the rest of the design stuff and how to work with a template. So here we are back at our template. You can see it's got the same kind of general 4 by 3 rectangular look that blank one that we had, and really all this was originally was a blank PowerPoint slide that I just added elements to as I went along. Now, like I mentioned, it's big. This thing is, if you printed it out, it would be 4 feet by 3 feet. In order to see it on a computer monitor, it's going to be scaled, which means I'm looking at it, if you look way down in the corner right here, I'm looking at it only 44% of its actual size. On a smaller monitor, this might be something like 22% or even 18% if you want to see the whole thing on your screen. If you're working in one of these sections, so like you're working inside the discussion section or whatever like that, you go down here and you grab the slider and you just slide it in order to make stuff larger, which can make it easier to see the print that you might be working on. If you're trying to work on print in a 18% view, you're just going to be squinting and making yourself miserable. Just use the slider to make life easier for yourself. You can scale it way up if you want to. If you want to, you can scale it all the way up to 100 to get an idea of what it would look like actually being printed. I'm going to take it back down. So we're about where we were before. Some design things that you can do to make your life easier. When you're moving things around, sometimes you want to know where stuff actually is on the page. So I'm going to teach you how to turn a couple of things on. What I'm going to do now is go up to View. You're going to notice over here there's a checkbox for ruler. Now watch the top of the screen. Watch right in here and over here on the side when I click this thing. What I've got now is a ruler that is centered in the middle of the thing. So it runs out to 23 inches on each side, and it's also centered on my left over here. Next thing I want to do is turn on guides. So what just happened is basically a horizontal and a vertical axis just appeared on my screen telling me where the exact center of the poster is. So if I were to fold it along this axis or along this axis, it'd be equally even. Good. It would be exactly even. If I'm particularly interested in symmetry as a principle, this is important. It also helps you to see when you're doing some alignment stuff that I'll show you in a little bit. Okay, so now basically I've got my working environment set the way I want it to be. Every one of these things on the screen. So this thing here, this, everything is just a text box. It's just a thing that I put there that holds words and other stuff. So I'm just going to click on the particular text box at the top, which is where all my title information goes, and you can see the wireframe appeared around it, along with all the standard dragging and resizing implements. If you don't like a particular text box that you've got, you can just click it and delete, and it goes away. If you don't like to hit delete, you can right-click on it and cut. Or if you don't like to mouse, you can go Edit, down to Cut. And that's how you can get rid of text boxes that you might not like. But what if you want a new text box? So what you do is you stay in the home screen, which is where I am, the home tab right here. If you look over here on the right, kind of in the middle of the screen, you'll see the icon for text box. So I'm just going to click that. It doesn't look like it's done anything at the moment. What I want you to do is watch what happens to the cursor when it hits the screen. Now it's turned into a tool. So I'm just going to click, hold, notice to turn to a plus sign, and I'm dragging down and to the right. And boom, I have a text box. This thing now is as manipulable as any other text box might be. So I can drag it over here, I can put it down here, I can insert it inside another text box if I want to. I can just go hog wild with the thing. I can stretch it, I can expand it, I can rotate it. It's your heart's desire, really, with one of these things once it gets made. I'm going to make it go away now, just because it was kind of cluttering things up. Now, obviously you can resize a text box however you want the thing to be resized. So say I just want to scale this one down here. I just grab the lower corner and now I've just made it proportionately smaller. Say I want to make it longer. Oops. Back where I want it to be. That bottom handle. Now I'm just stretching its bottom out. Now I've got an overlapping problem. I would have to go back and fix the layer underneath it. This can be a little imprecise though, and so once you have clicked a text box, go into the Shape Format tab. You'll notice this appears whenever one of these things is clicked. So here I am just in the middle of my slide. I'm not in any particular text box. If I go into a text box, so now I've clicked one, it's active. Click on Shape Format. You see over here on the right, I have height and width measurements. All of my text boxes in the middle of this slide are scaled at 17.5 inches. Their heights differ depending on what's in them, but I wanted them to be all the same width. So this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one, all exactly the same size, and I've centered them all. The chart and or picture boxes that I've left for myself, I can arrange however I want. If I decide I only want one picture there, if I want 3, I can add and detract however much I want to do on the thing. You'll notice that some of my boxes have borders, like this one here. Some of them do not, like this one, and this one. So you'll see the wireframes appear around them as I click on them. That's just so I can see where my work area is for this. It's very different from the actual wireframe that I've put on this thing over here. I am not a big fan of wireframes because I think it makes a poster look a little bit busy, but that's my design choice. If you like the look of the nice orderly boxes, then by all means keep them. Here is how you either get rid of them or put them in. So since I'm working over here right at the moment, I'm staying in my shape format. I'm going to shape outline, clicking my drop down. If I want to get rid of my outline, I simply click no outline, it's gone. Now, say I want to add an outline over here. I go to shape outline, I pick a color, black. I know, I'm boring. But say I want red. Now I've got a red outline around the thing. That's a kind of a fine line, so I can go down to weight. I can make it a little lighter, or if I want, I can make it big, fat, and heavy. There are other options I can do for that. You experiment around and decide what it is that you like about what it is that you're looking at. One thing I noticed that some people like to do is when they're drafting in their posters, they like to have frames, wires around where they're working, just because it helps them to see where their work areas are, where they're going to be writing. So there's no right or wrong to that. It's just whatever works for you. But whatever you decide to do is make sure you clean it up and you're consistent when you go through before final submission. My header boxes, where I have my different sections labeled, you notice that I do have light wireframes around those to help set them off a little bit. And you absolutely don't have to do that if you don't want to. But you'll notice another thing I've got going is that there isn't, that the print is different colors and there's a background thing going on. So I need to show you how to do that. So I'm just going to click in this one right here. Still in shape format. Going to shape fill. You can see down here, recent colors is picked. That's because this is the color that I have chosen for this thing. I'm going to talk more about color in a minute. Say I don't like this particular color. Say I want to make it black. Now my fill is black. I do not recommend doing a lot of white print on black backgrounds. That is really, really hard on the eyes. It's really, really hard for people to read. So that's probably not the best design choice in the world. But you can color really whatever you want. If you want a nice light purple, you could do that. That again, for a white print is not the best choice because that white lettering is really hard to read against that light purple background. So I've selected my text. I go back to home. I do the drop down on font color, and I'm going to pick a darker shade in that same family and see how that looks. That's not bad. I might want it to be a little bit darker than that just to help it pop a little bit more. So I'm going to go the next tone down. Yeah, that one shows up really, really nice. I've got a black frame around that thing. If I want to get really fancy, I go back to shape format, shape outline, pick the darkest possible color, and now I've actually got 3 tones all in the same family, which gives it a nice kind of contiguous look to the thing. And then I would just simply select those same colors for all of these different sections. Now, say you don't like one of your pre-selected colors, like you've got here on context. That is a really, really bright kind of obnoxious red. Say you like this sort of darker, rustier looking red. That's a color you can get, but it's a really specific color. And so I'm going to show you, first of all, what color that is and how to know what color it is, and then I'll tell you about how I got to that point. So I'm going to click in Conclusions and Further Research over here on the right. I'm going back up to Shape Fill. I'm going to go down to More Fill Colors. This lands me in a little dialog that gives me all kinds of control over what it is that I am looking at. So sometimes it'll open up on the color wheel, which is super nifty looking, but the problem with it is that, say you pick that color right there, if you go to another slide, it's hard to get that exact same color. So I tend to use the color wheel when I'm picking a color for the first time if I don't know exactly what color I want. And then once that's done, I go to the RGB slider, which basically means red, green, blue. And it gives me the exact values that I can then type in for anything. So what I'm going to do is cancel out of this because I don't want to change that color right at the moment. So I'm going to go back, Conclusions, Further Research, Shape Fill, More Fill Colors. And you can see my RGB is at 178, 30, and 54. So say I want to change all of my colors to match that. So 178, 30, and 54. Go up here, click on the discussion header, Shape Fill, More Fill Colors. Got my slider, 178, 30, 54. Okay, and look at that, matches. If you're doing the RGB sliders and you don't want to be clicking back and forth, write them down. Once you've decided what they are. There are other sliders that you can use. I'm sure you noticed this because RGB sliders has a drop down. You can do a grayscale slider, you can do CMYK and HSB. The reason I stick with RGB is because there is a tool on Macs. Windows machines probably have it, and I know there are apps you can download online, and particularly plugins or extensions for Chrome, if you're a Chrome user. They tend to only give you RGB values. So what I'm going to do is show you the Mac tool and explain to you how that works. So, yeah, we're okay on that. Okay. So I'm going to pop my screen out. This app is called the Digital Color Meter. So basically it's just sitting here in the middle of my screen right now. Any Mac should have this. It should be in your Applications folder. Once you open that up, go into Utilities and you will find it there. Or you can just open up a Finder window and in the search bar, search for Digital Color Meter and it'll take you right there. So say I want this particular color right here. It's just on the screen that's hiding behind the one I'm looking at right here. That is an RGB of 149, 0, and 8. I could type that into my color finder in PowerPoint and get that exact same color. say I really like this orange, whoops, down here, that's 207, 68, 44. It'll give you the exact values of everything that you want. It's just a matter of if there's a particular color, then that's the one you go after. You see this sometimes called eye dropping or tear dropping a color. Okay, so I can get rid of this because I know the colors that I actually want. At this point, we're pretty much nearly done with what you need to do in order to get your poster up and running. Yep, my cat just came in and now the dog's checking out the cat, and it could get a little exciting in here in a moment. I mentioned this already, it bears mentioning again. Do not go nuts with color. Try to keep them in the same family like I did over here. So don't have green titles and pink section headers and yellow text, because it's just going to be kind of a visual nightmare for people to look at. You also, like I mentioned before, want to watch out for figure-ground conflicts. So I'm going to give you another idea of what I mean by that. So I've just selected research question, going back to home, doing my color. What would be something really gross? See how that looks? Yeah, that's, ugh, yeah. One, that color yellow is not the nicest color in the world, and two, it's just really freaking hard to read against that purple background. That is a figure-ground conflict. You want to try to avoid those. So in general, it is better to have a darker text on a lighter ground, like that. The fact that I did them in the same family makes it kind of visually pleasing, and your viewers might not even know why it's so nice to look at. They just get that everything kind of fits or goes together. I'll show you a couple of things that students have done with their posters in the past that help to contribute to this. Next thing is I'm going to scale this up a little bit so you can see a note that is written here in the template. Right here, point sizes are scaled on the poster. So the title is an 88-point font. You can actually, yep, there it is. I'm using Baskerville on the title right here. That's the font I tend to go for. Secondary information in my page headers are all at 60. My section heads are at 48. And my section text, which is what I just clicked on here, is going to generally live in the 22 to 28 point range. Typo. Note that I've got right here, fonts should be in the same family. So up here, I was using Baskerville. Down here, I'm using Times New Roman. That's not cool. You don't want to be mixing and matching stuff. So I'm fixing it. Now again, it's all going to look consistent. I'm going to scale this back down and I'm going to do a thing. So here we are basically in the full page view again. So this looks really tiny right now, this text that I've selected. It's hard to read, which is why you kind of blow the thing out a little bit if you need to. But it's 28-point font. You're wondering, well, my God, why am I writing in a 28-point font? I've been told my entire academic career I should be writing in an 11 or a 12-point font. Well, here's what this thing's going to look like if you put it in a 12-point font. Yikes. You're going to have to blow this puppy up to like 150, 160% in order to be able to read that. And in poster land, your poster should be readable from a distance of about 4 to 6 feet. 22 is about as small as you can go. Maybe if you're young and you're really sharp-eyed and, you know, all healthy and stuff, you can read a 22-point font from 6 feet away, but it could be that a lot of your audience who are just kind of wandering around looking at stuff can't see it. And so although as students in my particular class, you're going to be doing this in an entirely digital medium, I want you to get into the habit of doing it presentation style. So stick to the 22 to 28 point font. Don't change it from section to section, because then it's going to look all weird and inconsistent. Get your stuff written out and then adjust to so that they're all in the same area. Whether it's 22, 24, 26, or 28, I don't care. It's whatever works best for the amount of language you've got going on in a thing. As I mentioned before, you want to stay consistent. So this is mostly consistent right now. I've got frames around almost all my text boxes. This one here does not. You don't want to turn in a poster that looks like this because it's just not gonna look great. Another thing to think about is alignment. So like I said, this thing is, the middle column is centered on the middle of the poster itself. The two columns on the left and the right, each one of these boxes is exactly the same width. So I'll click on this one. Shape format, you can see they're all going to be 13.5 inches wide, even though the heights are going to vary. My actual headers are all exactly 1 inch high, again, because I'm looking for consistency with them. Even if they're just a tiny, tiny little bit off, they're going to look like they're a tiny, tiny little bit off to somebody who's sitting there looking at the thing. So you want to make sure that you are as consistent as possible. This is going to be hard to do with the gutters in between your columns. That you're going to have to do some eyeballing, and that's where you use the ruler, and that can really help you out with that. You also want to make sure that your gutters on the left and on the right are the same size. Top and bottom don't matter so much, although you do probably want your bottom margins to all be lined up, just like you want the top margins of your rows to be all lined up. And in fact, they are not. So in order to show you this, I'm going to go into the view feature so you can see what I'm talking about. Discussion over here is a little too high. It's kicked up just a tiny little bit above the other one. I left it like that on purpose to illustrate a point, is it just simply doesn't look right. One of the nice things about this, so I'm going to click on this box, I'm going to click, hold, now I'm going to drag it down just a tiny little bit. See how those little lines appeared, those little dashed lines? That discussion, first section, findings, lit review, etc., and research question are all lined up. You notice I don't have any little dashed lines going up and down. That's because I'm a little out of alignment with my column. Now I'm aligned vertically and horizontally, and I'm going to let go real quick so I don't screw it up. I have a trackball, and that can be really kind of finicky to use. Track pads, depending on how sensitive you got them, can also be maddening with this, and so that's something you're just going to have to be aware of, is that this part of the design process can be really, really fiddly. In a particular column and from column to column, it doesn't matter if your boxes are the same height. Your research question is probably not going to be a big box. In fact, you shouldn't have this much white space in there. Your question's not going to eat up that much room, so I would eventually probably drag this thing up a little bit. Expand this one. See my little diamonds that just appeared there? Oh, look at that. Nice even spacing. Yay, it's all tidy. And let it go. In order to get me that kind of nice even look that I'm going for between sections. Column to column, it absolutely does not have to line up. You can make it line up if you want, but it might look a little freakish if you do. The one thing you don't want to do is slightly miss an alignment. So Whoops. If you're just a little bit off a vertical alignment, it's gonna look like you're just a little bit off. What you want to be is off enough so that it looks like a conscious choice. That's still probably not quite off enough for me. It's better, but that's something that I would probably spend more time than I ought to monkeying around with. You can see there's something not entirely kosher going on down here too. There, that's much better. Okay, because I am super slick, I forgot to do one of the most important things when you're building a research poster in PowerPoint, which is insert an image. Because there are always images in research posters. Sometimes these are tables and graphs, sometimes these are actual pictures, but they are a hard and fast feature of the format, and so you need to know how to do that. Fortunately, it is pretty easy to do. There are 2 or 3 main ways to get to it. So the first one is right here on the home screen. You'll see up here, I've got the picture icon with a drop down. I'm just going to go to Picture from File. I'm going to select the picture that I want, and I'm going to insert it in here. We've got Jason Momoa as Aquaman hanging out in my research poster. PowerPoint's always going to dump your picture right smack in the middle of your screen, in the middle of your slide. So at this point, it's just an object like any other thing, and you can move it around wherever you want. So it basically behaves exactly like a text box does. So if you want it over here, you can drag it over here, you can put it over here. One thing you're going to notice is this thing doesn't fit with any of my boxes. It kind of okay, maybe fits down here, but it's still sort of big. So you do need to do some resizing of it. Basically works the exact same way. You want to grab the proportional sizing tool in the corner rather than one of the ones on the side, because if you grab the one on the side, it's going to stretch it out and you get that weird stretchy body thing going on. You stretch it this way, you get really skinny Jason Momoa. So what I would recommend is deciding where you want your artwork and then putting it there and then scaling it so that it fits the dimensions that you're looking for. So basically I've fit it inside my text box for my picture almost perfectly. It's not quite going to scale to that 13 and a half dimensions that I had established before. So one of the nice things is I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so you can see this a little bit more readily. See, when I dragged it, that vertical dashed line up here on the screen, that means it's centered in that column, which is what I'm looking for, unless I'm going for some principle of asymmetrical balance. That is a design principle, and it can make things look super cool, but it does require some fiddling and some visualization skills. This is still a little bit too big for my liking because my gutter over here isn't too terribly big. So I'm going to shrink it down a little bit, but you notice now it's a little bit weird again. So same thing, grab, drag. Yeah, I'm having a hard time finding my centering thing. That looks like it's probably about as good as I'm going to get. it is lined up on the left, you might have to fuss with it a little bit. The other option is you deliberately take it down smaller so that it obviously does not fit in the box, and then you can put another picture in underneath it. You notice as soon as I started futzing around with the picture, a new tab opened up here. That's the picture format tab. So there's a lot of things you can do with your pictures. You don't want to get too fussy with it right away, but you can absolutely do some creative effects with these things. So say I'm doing something on objectification of the male body or something like that. I would want to go and find other pictures that kind of fit with this general theme and include them maybe down in the lower right corner of this, so I get kind of a sense of balance with this. And then I would make the wireframe around the chart or picture box go away because I don't want it there cluttering things up. The other ways you can insert a picture are obviously to go up to the Insert tab, and then you get all of the things that you can add to a slide, including text boxes, just like before, and you can also do this through the Insert menu up in the menu bar. Do not drag and drop. I have had students try to do that before, and what happens is it doesn't always take in the PowerPoint, and then when you go to save it, you end up losing the image, and then you're just going to be frustrated and have to redo it. So always use the insert feature in order to get the software to recognize that you've actually put a thing there on purpose. Now we're going to do our super fancy fade out into the last sections of my discussion. Last thing I want to do is show you some examples that other students have done in the past. So I am going to X out of this. No, I don't want to save those changes. I'm going to go back to Poster Project. I'm going to click on Sample Posters. I've got 3 posters here. I will add some more as we're going. I just wanted to get some stuff in here so you all could see what to look at. So the first one is by a student named Linnea Brigi. This was from a seminar on love that I did years and years ago. Several of you have seen this already for me, so, but some of you haven't, so I'm just going to go through some of the elements here that were good design elements. So first of all, light color of a font versus a dark ground, super easy to read. She's staying consistent with her colors from section to section. One choice I particularly liked is she changed the background of her poster to a not quite white. It's a pale gray with some blue tones to it, so it fits actually really, really well for an overall look. Her use of images and graphical elements is very strong on this. It adds a nice element of color to it. There is way, way too much text on this poster, though. If I'm not sure because this is a PDF, but if I were to go and look at the actual raw PowerPoint file, I'd be willing to bet that that's probably an 18-point font. This thing is difficult to read from 4 to 6 feet. It needs to be cut back some. This is a challenge with students because they're taught to write and develop their ideas, and posters in some ways encourage and reward economy. There's a way to get the information in you need without overloading the poster and making it hard to follow. It looks really good, it's just really, really dense as far as that goes. The next one I want to look at from that same class. The student's name now is Cecil Drake, formerly Megan Hatchew. Cecil transitioned a few years ago. This has some really smart design stuff going. So just from a personal standpoint, it's got text boxes and it has the effect of a frame, but without any of the wireframe. So it's got a nice orderly look, but it doesn't have little fine lines all over the place cluttering it up. So it's a well organized poster with a nice kind of simple, clean visual interface. It's got a great consistency of color to it. So you've got this green image here, which is picked up by the green here, which is picked up by the darker green of the lettering. The actual text is black. That's okay. That's a normal thing to have black text. One thing that just works super well is there are green tones even in these two pictures here, but then in this one at the bottom, you get this bright, vibrant red pink pop going on. So it helps the poster not be monochromatic. If there were just nothing but green and gray tones in this thing, it'd be too green and gray. That one blast of color, kind of in the low center of the thing, is a really, really effective choice. This last one is by Haley Willett. This one, Haley used the Orgo poster template. And you can see hers, it has wireframes all over the place on it. I think it's a little bit busy with the wireframes, but it is consistent, it's orderly, it is certainly easy to read, maybe a little bit too texty. I know that sounds weird coming from an English prof, but probably like the discussion could have been tightened up a little bit, and the same thing with the other section over here, What's Cooking. One of the really strong things about this poster is that it's got a lot of visual elements, and that is actually a really important thing. My template has 3 text boxes that say chart or picture in them. That does not mean you can only have 3, or that you must only have 3, or that you can have only 2, or that you must have no more than 3, or anything like that. You can do whatever you want. You can see that Haley actually does a lot of visual work on this thing, which helps to break it up. It's a little lopsided with the visuals over to the left because there's nothing on the right side, but that doesn't mean that she did a bad job with it. It just means that probably a visual kind of up in this area to balance out some of the visuals going on down here wouldn't have been the worst choice in the world. This is still an excellent piece of work, particularly for someone who'd never done a poster before. Like I said at the beginning, posters are a plastic environment. You can do pretty much anything you want with them as long as you're fulfilling their requirements and parameters of the assignment. I hope this has been helpful in kind of giving you a walkthrough of how to deal with setting one of these things up and starting to build it in. If you have any questions, my students, as we're working along, you should absolutely reach out to let me know. The rest of you, I hope you found this helpful in some way. I hope that you're all doing okay. I will be talking to you soon. There's going to be more of these coming because there's more stuff my students need to know, and this is, so far as I can tell at the moment, the best way to get it to them in a way that's convenient for them. So thanks, and I will talk to you later.